Welcome back, ScreenRanters! The MCU is one of the most intricate franchises to ever grace the silver screen. Due to that, there are so many details in the film that went unnoticed for years. Today, we're going to tackle one of the most beloved Marvel characters, Tony Stark. We've scanned through each frame of the 3 Iron Man films and picked out some of the best hidden details, references, and Easter eggs to showcase, either nodding to the comics, other MCU films and shows, and even to our real-world history. So grab your repulsor gloves and let's get started.
When did you become an expert in thermonuclear astrophysics?
Last night.
Every so often, Marvel will throw in a massive collection of Easter eggs all at once. See the collector's collection in the first Guardians of the Galaxy. Well, Iron Man 2 did the same. Near the end of the film, Nick Fury chats to Tony Stark about all things Avengers. We can see a map that has highlighted a number of key locations. We see Stark's destroyed mansion in Malibu, Mjolnir in New Mexico, Captain America on ice in Greenland, and various others. We also see the not yet introduced Wakanda and the special place marked in the middle of the sea, which is speculated to be Namor. We could see the Atlantis mutant in the MCU at some point. As Stark and Pepper Potts argue about the giant stuffed rabbit in Iron Man 3, we can see a certain Christmas stocking on the mantelpiece behind them. That stocking has the name Jarvis written on it, which is, of course, the name of Stark's reliable AI. Well, it also hints to what Jarvis's next role is going to be. The stocking's colors are red, green, and gold, which just happens to be the color scheme of Vision. It could just be traditional colors of the time period, but we think it's a reference. We hope they continue to put the stocking out later, just with Jarvis crossed out and Vision's name written on instead.
I'll make you trust me, but we need to go.
What? The MCU's main creative mind is Kevin Feige. His noggin has helped turn the Marvel brand into the beast it is today. Beyond the superhero genre, Feige is a massive Star Wars fan. So much so that a lot of Marvel films will have a scene that involves a limb being removed, a la Luke Skywalker in The Empire Strikes Back. In Iron Man 3, the reference continues, with baddie Aldrich Killian trying to burn through Stark's powered-down Iron Man suit. Stark pops out a hidden Assassin's Creed-esque blade and slices off Killian's hand. He then gets away, briefly. Fear not, kids. Due to extremists, Killian regrows his phalanges. In 2008, we got the first Iron Man film. As Stark is trying to escape some jets, more on them later, he calls Roddy's mobile/cell phone, all to tell his friend that he's actually Iron Man and to stop the planes firing missiles at him. The music that plays out of his phone is a nod to the Iron Man 1966 cartoon. The tune is the show's intro, just turned into a basic ringtone. The cartoon only ran for 1 season before it was cancelled and fell into Marvel lore. The same song also makes various other appearances in the MCU film, such as At the Casino. We hear a jazzy version of the song there. Speaking about old cartoons, well, we get a mention of another in Iron Man 3. As Stark calls up Happy Hogan, Potts is chatting with a soon-to-be-revealed villain, Killian. As Stark gets frustrated at Hogan's lack of technology skills, he mentions that he misses Stark. But Starks is always hanging out with his Superfriends. Of course, he means the Avengers. However, this is actually a reference to the 1973 DC-created cartoon, Superfriends. It was filled with many of the biggest heroes, like Wendy, Marvin, and Wonder Dog. Yeah, it was weird. And I guess Krypto refused to be in it. The 3 were later replaced with real heroes, the Wonder Twins and Gleek, the Space Monkey. As Stark returns home in the 2008 classic, he spots mentor-turned-betrayer Obadiah Stane playing a tune on his piano. The song is a strong indicator for Stane's heel turn in the film. The tune on the piano is by Antonio Salieri. The urban legend states that Salieri poisoned Amadeus Mozart in order to remove his rival and to be known as the best musician of all time, just like Stane attempting to take out Stark for the recognition of being the Lord of Technology. At least that's what fictional plays, films, and TV shows have said about Salieri and Mozart. The truth is likely the 2 musical legends were just friends. No Agatha Christie plot there. Those eager-eyed fans might notice that James Rhodes looks vastly different in Iron Man 2. Congrats if you noticed. Well, with Don Cheadle tagging in for Terrence Howard in the role, the filmmakers decided to allude to the change. As Rhodey walks up into the hearing, Tony Stark gets up to chat with his bud. The 2 have a brief exchange, with Rhodey stating, "It's me, I'm here, deal with it, let's move on." Almost as though Rhodes is pleading to the audience, rather than Stark in the scene. Very fourth wall breaking by War Machine. A certain Deadpool might get jealous if Rhodes continues to smash down that fourth wall. It's like DP's whole thing. With his life on the line, Stark and Yinsen put together the first Iron Man suit to defeat their captors in the 2008 epic. Well, most fans of Iron Man will only know the character in the famous red and yellow color scheme. However, in the comics, much like the film, Stark's first armor was also silver. The film version was much more steampunk than the comic version. The comic 1963 variation looked like it was made from a small amount of parts. The MCU suit was more intricate. Lots and lots of pieces were put together to form the overall battle armor. Which version looks better? Battle it out in the comments. Speaking of Yinsen, beautiful segue, the final time we see the plucky scientist isn't where he perishes. In Iron Man 3, we get a brief scene involving Stark's lifesaver at the science conference. As the film begins with a flashback in 1999, at the New Year's Eve shindig, we see Ho Yinsen also celebrating the new millennium. He tries to chat to Stark, but Stark was at peak jerk at this point. So he just dismisses his future friend's attempt to introduce him to another scientist. Side note, it's cute that Happy has similar facial hair to Stark. Later on in the flashback, Stark would meet Killian, which he also dismisses. There's a pattern here. After Stark has wrecked his house in Iron Man 2, he chats with Nick Fury about Stark's dad, Howard. Tony is wearing a floral pattern robe. While this could be dismissed as quirky fashion, it's not. In Agent Carter, the prequel TV show, we see Howard Stark wearing the exact same robe. As a result, it's great attention to detail in the MCU. Considering the conversation Stark is having, and the fact that he was terrible the night before, it's fitting that he's looking for comfort from his father in some capacity. More so when the two often had a rocky relationship, one that Stark would embrace and accept during the time heist in Endgame. Once Stark returned from Afghanistan, he began to put together a better, less crude version of the Iron Man armor, known as the Mark II. After that had its issues, Stark began working on the Mark III, a suit less likely to freeze and plummet holes through many floors of his mansion. He requests that Jarvis gives it a gold titanium alloy. Once he sees the all-gold design, Stark describes it as a little ostentatious. Well, the gold is actually a nod to the comics. In the first Avengers comic in 1963, Stark is wearing a bulky golden armor as the team battles Loki. MCU Stark decides to add hot rod red to Jarvis's design and births the color scheme we all know today. All the way back in 2008, when the MCU was just a glint in Kevin Feige's eye, we got a reference to a certain red, blue, and white character. After Stark takes the Mark III out for a test drive involving the jets, he gets back to the lab to take the suit off. Only it's not so easy. It's his first time, lots of innuendos sprinkled in the scene. Anyways, in the background, on Tony's workbench, we can see a half-built tech version of Captain America's shield. 3 years before Cap would arrive in the MCU. How or why Stark has it in his film is unknown. However, we get to see the iconic item in the sequel. And here we are with the second mention. In Iron Man 2, Stark begins to create a fancy new arc reactor that doesn't give him palladium poisoning. As he does his science stuff, Agent Coulson pops in. He looks at the workbench and gets excited. He spots the Captain America shield prototype, already highlighting Phil's Steve Rogers love that will be a big plot point in the first Avengers film. He asks if Stark knows what it is. Instead of answering, Stark uses it to level his massive pipe. Slightly deflated, Coulson changes the conversation quickly. Thankfully, he's been reassigned so he doesn't have to be emotionally beaten in regards to his hero. In Iron Man, Obadiah Stane is played by Jeff Bridges, the actor that became known for starring in 90s cult comedies, one of which was as the dude in the Big Lebowski. Well, Marvel wanted to add in a reference during their 2008 film. So, when Pepper Potts is breaking into Stane's office, she takes a gander at his computer. After all, if you're a supervillain, having your master plan being easily accessible is par for the course. Within his vast, secret collection of incriminating evidence, one of the designs sticks out. Under Vessel, the name is MSC Lebowski. Although in Iron Man, Bridges is more like Walter than the dude. In 2008, Fox were still the owners of the X-Men film rights, so it's strange to see a reference to Marvel's mutants in Iron Man. After the Mark II is made, Stark tries to test the suit against the power of the SR-71. We can see on the heads-up display that he's referring to the Blackbird. While this aircraft is a real plane, it's well connected to the X-Men. They would regularly go from one escapade to another in the Blackbird. If Marvel weren't looking to refer to the mutants, they could have chosen another vehicle. So it seems like a deliberate attempt, but with the X-Men in the MCU soon, we could see the race in action. Oh, that might be a problem after Endgame. During Iron Man 2, we see film highlight Justin Hammer trying to sell a variety of technology to Rhodey and crew. one of which is a self-guided missile that's called the Ex-Wife. He later mentions, if it were any smarter, it'd write a book that would make Ulysses look like it was written in crayon. Instead of just a brag, the quote is actually a remark to real-life events, as the writer of Ulysses, James Joyce, had eyesight issues, especially in his later life. When he was writing Ulysses, he struggled to see what he was writing, so he wrote the book on big white paper with red crayons. This combination made it easier for him to see. Once Killian's plan is known in Iron Man 3, Tony and Rhodey hunt down the Mandarin. Stark knows that he's only an actor called Trevor Slattery. As the two heroes interrogate Slattery about Killian's plan, Slattery celebrates a goal scored on the TV. He's watching a football/sorcerer match between English Premier League Liverpool and Chelsea. From his celebration at Daniel Agger's goal, Slattery is probably a Liverpool fan, which highlights further that he's a villain. Some quality football/sorcerer banter there. However, the film takes place near Christmas time, yet this match actually happened in May 2012, which makes the timeline confusing. For those interested, Liverpool 141. Recently, real-life Tony Stark, Elon Musk, has been in the news with the announcement of a new baby with a confusing name. Well, in Iron Man 2, we see the legendary Stark and Musk meet on the silver screen. When Stark arrives in Monaco at the Hôtel de Paris, just before the Grand Prix, he meets some of the elite, one of which is the Tesla creator. The exchange is brief between the two. Musk throws in the idea about an electric jet. Stark is a bit dismissive and leaves pretty quickly, but he does say the two should talk about it more. Stark then gets the joy of meeting Justin Hammer there, which is a blessing because he's the best. For those that have been waiting, we have the Jets reference we mentioned earlier. Before Iron Man became the MCU generator, there weren't any big plans for a sequel in place. As such, the villain for the second film was unknown. Well, as Stark captures the attention of military planes, we get a nod at the next big bad of the franchise. One of the pilots refers to himself as Whiplash 1 as he hunts down Iron Man, which is, of course, about Mickey Rourke's character in 2010. Considering Whiplash loves birds, well, one in particular, and another name for plane is bird, it all flows together nicely. Whilst at the Senate Armed Forces Committee in Iron Man 2, Stark decides to get under the skin of Senator Stern. He mentions that he'll consider the position of Secretary of Defense. This relates to the comics as well. Just before Scarlet Witch, controlled by Dr. Doom, decided to run everything in the story, Avengers Disassembled, Stark has that position. In that event, he's addressing the United Nations. Wanda Maximoff uses her powers to make it look as though Stark is drunk while delivering his speech. As many know, Stark has had a drinking problem. The world saw this embarrassment, so the UN revoked the Avengers' security clearance, which played a massive part in Tony later resigning from the government position. One of the main baddies to hold Stark and Yinsen hostage was named Raza. Many might think the name is just for the film. Nope. Those that spend all their free time reading Marvel comics, like us, will know the truth. The name Raza is from the comic character Raza Longknife. He's an alien cyborg that hops about in space with the Starjammers. They're like the Guardians, only more like pirates than outlaw adventurers. The Starjammers are also led by Corsair, aka Christopher Summers, the pappy of Cyclops, Havoc, and Vulcan. The MCU's Raza even has a scarring on his face similar to the comic version's robot eye, only on the reverse side. We got to see the Iron Patriot suit a couple of times in Iron Man 3, mostly when Rhodey used it and then when the President was locked within the armor by Killian. Beyond looking like a design created by Captain America, the Iron Patriot is a nod to the comics. After the events of Secret Invasion, Norman, I'm a bit of a scientist myself Osborn is put in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. in Dark Reign, which he dissolves to create Hammer. He also creates his own Avengers team, mostly with villains. He takes on the mantle of the Iron Patriot. After all, the Green Goblin identity wouldn't be good for public relations of a heroic team. Osborn needed a fresh start. We first see Christine Everhart in the first Iron Man outing. She plays a journalist that goes to interview Stark. Instead, they do something a little different. Pepper then insults her and chucks Everhart out. Everhart pops up in Iron Man films throughout, eventually becoming the news anchor during 2012's The Avengers. Anyway, Everhart is a comic character as well. Within the illustrated papers, Everhart works for the Daily Bugle, the famous workplace of Spider-Man. See how it all connects? All the way back in 2008, the MCU was setting up for Peter Parker and his surrogate dad, Stark, being together. Or Marvel just wanted a comic journalist that Sony didn't have the film rights to. Yeah, it could be that. In a blink and you miss it moment, one of the most powerful characters in Marvel made a secret appearance in 2008's Iron Man. Kinda. It was on a film poster. As Stark nearly crashes during his test drive, we can see the poster on the side of a building. It shows Fin Fang Foom, the massive dragon that causes many heroes a headache whenever he decides to cause havoc. But he looks vastly different to how we usually see him in the 616 comic universe. Well, that's because this, armored version of Foom is from another universe. Specifically, he's from the comic, Iron Man Viva Las Vegas, which was actually written by Jon Favreau, the director of the first Iron Man film. Once again, we go back to the hero map that we started the video with. Well, there was also another reference that was a little less obvious. On one of the screens, we can see some footage of a news story. It's actually taken from 2008's The Incredible Hulk. The story is taken from Culver University, shortly after the battle with Hulk, General Ross, and Blonsky, which proves that the events of the film happen at the same time as Iron Man 2, further highlighted in the post-credits scene where Stark meets with Ross. Although, Banner looks a little different from the Incredible Hulk to when he arrives in the Avengers. Wonder what happened. And that's a wrap. Which one of our Easter eggs did you spot the first time watching the Iron Man trilogy? Pop your thoughts into the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe. All of those really help us out. Finally, thanks for joining. Bye-bye.